All right. So I introduce you to another chapter of business communication where we're trying to look at verbal skills. So we want to focus on understanding the language use in oral communication, the verbal and linguistics modifiers and regulators, the voice culture, the techniques of delivery. Then we will conclude the chapter. So let's start with the language used in oral communication. Okay, so the principles of accuracy, the principles of brevity, the principle of clarity may have been mentioned earlier, and the hallmarks of any good piece of communication. That is what we have spent time to look at. All right. So now the most important of these principles is that the communication is audience oriented. Now, audience oriented communication, what do we mean by audience oriented communication? So an audience oriented communication is a communication which is delivered keeping the specific requirements and the expectations of the communicated, which is delivered keeping the specific requirements and expectations of the communicated in mind. That is very important. I'll repeat on what we mean by audience-oriented communication. It is a communication which is delivered keeping the specific requirements, okay, and the expectations of the communicated. It is delivered keeping the specific requirements and expectations of the communicated in mind. That is what we mean by audience-oriented communication. So, for example, if you were to take an example, you can say you're talking to a 50-year-old person using slang that was coined a few years ago would not be suitable in most cases. For one thing, the person may simply not understand the communication, and in some cases, the communicated may even interpret the communication as being disrespectful, particularly if the communicator is much younger. So it is very important that you understand, keep the communicated in mind. That is very, very important. Now let's just look at the 7 C's of oral communication. What could be some of the 7 C's of oral communication? These are to be kept in mind all the time. We call them the 7 principles that guide communication. And to start with, we have what is known as completeness, right? Oral communication is supposed to be complete. That is to say, it should contain all the relevant information. It is supposed to be clear. By clarity, we mean it should have the capacity to convey the communication directly, and it has to be concrete. To be concrete, we mean it should be able to be solid in nature and not vague. Okay, it has to be correct. That is to be accurate. It is supposed to be concise. That is to be brief and precise, and cautious, to be polite, and candid. That is to be honest. So these are the 7 C's of communication. I repeat: completeness, clarity, concreteness, correctness, conciseness, cautiousness, and candidness. All right, it's supposed to be candid too. That is to be honest. Now, these are very, very important. Okay, they have to be kept in mind always. We need to keep these in mind. Clarity of thought is very, very imperative. We need it. Okay, in mind. What about clarity? We have seen previously that clarity is one of the cardinal principles of communication. Now, due to the nature of oral communication, it is important that the communicator organizes their thoughts and mentally goes over the communication before actually transmitting it. the dispatch and the reception of the communication itself are almost simultaneous in oral communication. It is difficult to change what has already been said. Okay, this does make it essential, okay, to ensure that undesirable communication is transmitted, right? So you have to make sure that there is clarity of thought. The other element is clarity of expression, right? What do we mean by clarity expression? Okay. When you are expressing or when you are encoding a communication, this can usually be achieved by the following. You can use the simple words and the sentences, properly avoiding the use of big words such as perhaps, maybe, possibly, peradventure, among others. You will try to use the most precise and suitable words with which one can convey the information, avoiding the use of long words or words which the audience is not likely to be familiar with. So the word purchase should be avoided since it is rent today, right? So you have to avoid the use of jargon unless you know that the communicator is in a position to understand the jargon in question. You will have to use to avoid the foreign words, or we may say the classical quotations, right? Unless the communicator can appreciate, you will have to avoid the use of slang in a formal setting and avoid the use of excessive formal words in an informal atmosphere. Understand all those. So, for example, consider the number one is in a state of distress, has broken, is not working, has burst. Right here. Now, is excessively formal and would, in fact, sound rather pompous and stuffy in most settings. Is neither too formal nor too informal and would be suitable in most situations. Is extremely informal and casual and is suited only to such places as high schools and discos. Right. So you have to choose and you have to be clear in the way how you speak and the way how you communicate with the people. Let me quickly lead you to concreteness. Concreteness simply means that while communicating, it is preferable not to use indecisive terms which do not give the communicator a clear picture. So the use of the most precise words available to convey the information helps, to communicate the information in such a way that the communicator is left with no doubts, about either the intent, objective of the communication, or of its contents. Correctness. All oral communication should be correct and accurate. In order to ensure this, right, for us to ensure this, all the concerned information should be included, right? All the included information should be free from any errors or any mistakes in pronunciation, right? Conciseness. What do we mean by conciseness? So the communication should be to the point and direct, right? So the communicator must respect the fact that other people's time is precious and should not be wasted by using irrelevant or unnecessary information, which can be avoided you know, spending a lot of essays and a lot of time beating around the bush. So in the oral communication, excessively long sentences are often rather difficult to follow. So they should therefore be shortened, all right, or divided into a number of smaller sentences. Okay. Let's talk about the other aspect of communication being courtesy. Courtesy. So as we have discussed, the best and most important way in which the communicator can display courtesy towards the communicated is by adjusting and altering and modifying the communication. That is to suit the needs of the communicator. In addition to this, it is also important to reply promptly to any communication or feedback and do not leave the other person hanging midair. Another aspect of courtesy is to respect the feelings and the sentiments of the other person, right? This does not mean that one should agree with everyone or said by the other person. It simply means that one needs to realize and accept the fact that other people may hold opinions which are completely different from one's own ideas. Right. So the other aspect of communication is a candor. Now, candor is important, okay? Because it is very important to be as candid as possible while making any communication. So most people know when they are being lied to or when a communicator is not being completely honest with them. So as Abraham Lincoln once said, you cannot fool all the people all the time. And when people realize that the other person or party is not being honest, they tend to lose faith and confidence in that person. Once this happens, it is very difficult to regain the trust which has been lost, especially since trust is never an easy thing to earn. So, in order to avoid such a scenario, which would definitely put virtual stop to the communication process, it is sensible to be as frank as possible right from the outset. Let me talk about a little bit now about the verbal linguistics modifiers, regulators, and voice cultures. What is a modifier? Right? What is a modifier? Okay, what is a modifier? A modifier is a constituent. So a modifier is a constituent in an endocentric construction that imparts information relating to the head of the construction. So an example in English, in the endocentric construction, the very hot soup, the constituents, the and very hot are modifiers of soup, the head of the construction. So verbal modifiers are very, very important. Okay. So when you talk about the verbal modifiers, so the introductory verbal modifiers are introductory phrases that naturally adhere to the subject of the main clause. So when the subject of the main clause is not the performer of the action in the phrase, a dangling modifier is the result. So what about wrong? Let me give you an example of what is wrong. Parting her curls. The afternoon stretched long and hot before her. She not the afternoon. was parting her curls. What is correct? Parting her curls, comma, she watched the afternoon stretched long and hot before her. And as she was parting her curls, the afternoon stretched long and hot before her. Right? That is very important. Let me give you another example of what it's from. Let's say, while dreaming of dancing sugar pounds, the children's nap continued through the dreamy afternoon. Who is the dream? The nap or the children? This is very, very leaving everything dangling. What is correct now? While dreaming of dancing sugar pounds, the children napped continuously through the dreamy afternoon. So I'm just giving you examples of the same. So it is very, very important that you understand the use of these modifiers. The modifiers of verb phrases are typically adverbial phrases or prepositional phrases, but noun phrases can serve as modifiers as well. In the following examples, let's pick the modifiers that is in italics and the verb of phrases that it modifies in underline. The manner, for example, he read the letter carefully. Point in time, they discussed the proposal in the afternoon. That is very, very important. About duration, you should keep your tax records for several years. Frequency, I read the Times quite often. Location, we met in my office. So that is how we use these. These are very, very important. About the voice cultures, the process of bringing the voice under control is known as voice culture, which include traditional and scientific methods to improve the quality of voice. The 4 basic steps of voice training include the following. Hearing, control of breath, practicing, physical and mental fitness. About hearing, imitation is the first step towards learning. This statement implies to voice training too. Concentrated listening is the basic requirement. By listening more and more, the brain creates and stores a mental image of the sound. So the notes, the tunes, the rhythms, the speed, the words, the volume, the tonal quality of the voice, among others, are stored in the brain. So when we try to speak, this mental image coordinates with the laryngeal muscles to produce this sound required. Thus, it can be easily understood that the more we hear, the more we listen. There will be a better ability of voice production, control of breath. It is also a very important step towards voice culture. If we can master our breath, we can easily master our voice. So breath control gives fitness, fineness, clarity, steadiness, confident phonation to the voice. There are 4 types of breathing. Okay, let's say clavicular, shoulder, that's shoulder, costal, that's chest, diaphragmatic, and abdominal. So with clavicular breathing is useful for very true notes. Coastal breathing is used for high-pitched notes, and diaphragmatic breathing is useful for everyone. When somebody cultivates this type of breathing, an unnecessary and unwanted wobble and the shaking of voice can be controlled. Right. That is very important. What are some of the techniques now of delivery? To start with, you have to select the topic that you're going to talk about. Research about the topic. Understand what you're going to say, because preparation before the speech is very, very important. Okay, it is very, very important. When you're given time to give a speech, it is important to recognize the people that are in the audience or observe the order of seniority. So the speech always has an introduction. That's as that one in the written report. That should be the introduction. Make sure when you're delivering, you keep on to the topic and be brief in the way how you speak. Speak. Arrange the points in order of the importance, starting with the least and end with the strong, important, the most important points as you are trying to deliver your speeches. When you are delivering, it is important that you consider being confident. It is very important to be confident, and it is also important to be sincere in the time when you are communicating. It is important to analyze the audience. That is to know the age group, to know the composition of your audience, who is going to listen to you, and try to make sure that you tailor the communication towards the people or the audience. As you are delivering, it is very, very important that your personal appearance, okay, should match the audience because people will judge you by your appearance before you speak. So you have to be very careful, okay? You have to be very careful that when you are speaking or when you're delivering a speech, appear good. Try to dress according to the occasion. About the posture, this is likely to be the most obvious thing your audience sees in you. So even if listeners cannot be close enough to detect facial expressions and eye movements, they can see the general form of the body text. So you probably think, what's like? So the way you walk before your audience also does matter. The way you leave your posture matters a lot. Okay, be careful in the way you walk. You cannot just be moving up and down. Stop shaking more like you're dancing in front of the people. Stand still. Walk, make a step when you make a point. Move occasionally and move with the intentions. Just move anyhow. The way how we express your face in what is known as facial expression is very important too. The gestures as well should be used in a good way. Make sure that you understand the meanings of the gesture and you understand the audience to which you are communicating so that you cannot, uh, disturb the whole communication process because people, other symbols, other gestures mean different things in some other culture. So understand and careful in the way how you use the gestures. Use your voice, make sure properly, and the pitch of your voice should be varying properly. Talk, do not the talk should not be monotone. It's like you're just saying the same thing, same pitch, same everything. At least move a little bit higher, lower, moderate your voices properly. And even the speed at which you are speaking, it should be properly moderated. Okay? Emphasize, do what are known as the vocal emphasis, among others. Then you will be fine. Right.